All right, now we're going to look at 1-1 day 2. So continuing on with that chapter 1, talking about the different ways to display data. All right, so a two-way table describes two categorical variables. So what we've been looking at up to this point has only been one variable. And then a marginal distribution is the marginal distribution of the categorical variables in a two-way table is the distribution of values of one variable among an individual described by the table. This will make more sense when we do examples. I know you're kind of like, what in the world? So don't worry. Conditional distribution is describes the values of that variable among individuals who have a specific value of another variable. Basically, a condition has been placed on the variable, so it's not just that variable, it's that variable as it applies to another variable. All right, next is a segment bar graph. This is kind of like a pie chart, but it's, instead of being round like a circle, it's basically little segments in a bar. So it's a single bar with segments. And the segments basically are equal to the percentage that they make of the whole. So segments that correspond to the percentages of each variable. So basically like a pie chart, but in a bar. So if two variables take up 50% altogether, then one would be half the bar, the other one would take up the other half of the area of the bar. And then association, we say there is an association between two variables if specific values of one variable tend to occur in common with specific values of the other. All right, and that's it for our terms. All right, let's look at number 10, part A. Part A is not too bad at all. Part A is asking how many students are described. So all we have to do is add all the students up. So part A is equal to 5,375 once you add up all 6 numbers. Part B is asking us what percent of the students smoke. So if we look at student smokers, we add up all those numbers. And so we would get 188 plus 418 plus 400, all divided by the total, right? Because percents are part divided by the whole. And then we would get 18.68%. All right. Sorry, that's not part B. That's part A, question number 2. Now part B. Give the marginal distribution of parents' smoking behavior. So we're only looking at the parents. So the parents are these kids. So we're looking at the parents to the whole, right? The part is the neither parent smoke divided by the whole. So we add up those two groups, and it talks about count, which would be 1356. Add up these two groups, you get 2239. And then add up the last two numbers and you get 1780. So those are the counts. And then to find the percents, you take the counts and divide them by the total. So you do that for each of these. Sorry, that's a 7.5. And so our percents are 25.23%, 41.66%, 41.66%, and 33.12%. All right, and then finally part C talks about conditional distributions of student smoking behavior. So we're looking at students who do not smoke given that neither parent smokes, right? So we're still using these totals here. So neither student smokes out of the fact that, the students do not smoke given that neither student smokes. So that's what goes on the bottom. So this would be 13.86, oh sorry, I wrote the wrong number down, 86.14%. And then we could find the percent of students who smoke given that neither parent smokes by taking 188 divided by 1356, or we could just subtract this from 100, and that would be 13.86%. Then we do students do not smoke given that one parent smokes. So this would be 1823 divided by the total in that column, which is 2239. So that would be 81.42. And then again, we could just subtract that from 100 or take 416 divided by 2239. Either way, it's going to be 18.58%. And then finally, we get to student does not smoke given that both parents smoke. And this would be 1380 divided by that column total, which is 1780, which would be 77.53%. And then the second percentage would be 22.47%. All right, so now let's look at number 11. That one is where we're going to make a graph compare colors by vehicle. So at the bottom here, we're going to look at each one of these colors. So we're going to compare for black, and within the black, we're going to look at whether it's luxury or SUV. And we do this for each color. So then we do the same thing for silver. Luxury, SUV. And then we do the same thing for white pearl, luxury or SUV. And again, you'll want to write these out. If I write with this pen, it's a little bit too thick. I did write it out on my paper though. And this would be gray, luxury SUV, given that it's white, luxury SUV blue, luxury SUV red, right? And then so on and so forth for each of these things. The other thing that you need to do is make a legend, sorry. So luxury will get like blank boxes, and SUV will get ones that have lines through it. SUV, not X. Okay, so then we would go for each one of these totals. So these are percents. Since the problem is in percents, or the data is in percents. And then down here is colors by type. All right, so we would just draw columns. I'll just do the first couple here. The first one is 22%, so 22% is up here. I'm gonna try to make it straight. I know, I'm sorry. And then SUV for black is 13%, should be right about here. So it's okay for these to touch because they're related. And then we would want to make the little striped lines in the SUV one. So that way we can see that that's the SUV one. This is not the only way to make this graph, but this is one way. Then we're going to leave a space between the colors. So the silver one is 16. So I'm going to leave a little space between the black and the silver. And the SUV for this one is exactly the same. So you try to make these all the same width, and then the SUVs get the little lines in it. Okay, so continue that graph. We'll check on that tomorrow. Then part B says, write a few sentences to describe what you see. So we would write something like the heights of the bars in the graph are different for each color except silver. Right, silver is the only one where they're exactly at the same height. The biggest difference is in pearl white and white. So we try to use these comparison words like the biggest difference or they're different except for the two that are the same so that we can differentiate and describe the graph. All right, number 12. Number 12 is, does this data support the study's conclusion about the relationship between anger and heart disease? So take a second to read the video, pause it, or sorry, read the question. You can pause the video and then restart it when you're done so you have a good grasp of what's going on. So we're going to start opening and talking about state, plan, do, conclude. So this is going to be our problem solving steps. So we'll state the problem. Right now, we're just going to state it in a question. So do the data support the idea that people get angry easily? Tend to have more heart disease. Perhaps are more likely to have heart disease. So state, and then the next is plan. So we are going to, so we will compare level of anger with level of heart disease. All right. So then our do is actually to make the table. We cannot compare things that have different total values without using percentages. So you can see that the low anger is 310 or 3110, and the moderate angle is 40. The moderate anger is 4731. And the high anger is 633. So all these values are different. So what we want to do is use percentages so that we can compare a part to a whole versus comparing 53 to 3110 and then a 110 to 4731. It just doesn't work like that. So we make a new chart and we're going to have low anger, moderate anger, and then high anger. And then this will be CHD and no CHD. All right, so in order to look at this, because we want to know how the CHD works in low anger, we're going to take 53 divided by 3110 and write it as a percent, so 1.7%. And this one down here, the remaining, so just subtract from 100. All right, and then we do moderate anger. So now we're looking at how CHD is affected by moderate anger, and that would be 110 divided by 4731, which is 2.3%, and then 4621 divided by 4731, or subtract it from 100, and then the high anger, you're going to take 27 divided by 633 to get 4.3%, or the other one is 95.7%. Now we need to make a conclusion. So now that we made it into percents where we can actually compare, right, we're going to do a conclusion. So we can see that the overall occurrence of CHD was relatively small. Right, you can see it's relatively small for each of these groups, only going from 1.7 to 4.3. The percent of the population with CHD does increase as the anger level increases. So apparently there is some association between anger, the level of anger, and chronic heart disease. All right, and that's it for today.